Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to episode 5 of the Council Forcecast. Today, joining us, we have Evan Nova.
Hello.
Jen Sarai.
How you guys doing?
Unfortunately, no Antoine today. He had to abandon us a few minutes ago. But who we do have, and I'm sure you'll be very pleased to hear it, Grey Jedi 91.
You're just kidding, I'm here.
You worried me then.
Hey guys.
Yes, he is alive.
Yeah.
As far as we know,
Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
you might be a disembodied voice in a computer just convincing us all that you're not dead when in actuality your body was disintegrated and you got turned into some terrifying AI.
Right. So I was just about to explain the truth, but then Connor interrupted me for that. In any case, as Connor explained weeks back in hilarious fashion, I'm a trucker now, so I'm never at home. I think he likened me to some drunkard in a bar somewhere, but whatever. I'm here now. It probably sounds like I'm recording this from inside of a turtle's anus, but that's because I'm sitting inside of a hallway, and it's really windy outside, and I live like a gypsy. So I apologize for any technological problems. On with the show.
That's
The show
fine.
must go on.
It won't be a problem. You're here. That's the important thing.
Exactly.
Looking at you, Antoine. No, it wasn't his fault that he couldn't be here. I'm only joking.
How dare you have lady troubles?
Connor, you're slightly off center.
I know, I kind of did that deliberately to focus on my posters rather than
okay,
all the
sorry.
boxes
Everybody
on
look
my
at his
every
knife.
episode, and you're just noticing it.
I did not realise, sorry. I don't think that's pronounced before. Anyway, today we have the Clone Wars Retcons to discuss, which I'm sure people have been looking forward to greatly, especially with the resident nerd rage ranter here.
Yes.
Iron Fist.
Yes. Finally, we're getting to it after 2 delays, but with the Contract of Evil episode and then the trailer coming out, we had a few other things to get through first, but it's here now, and we're hopefully gonna make it worth the wait. So,
Yes.
shall we begin?
Yes.
I have a question, just like before we really start here. Like, how long do we do this for?
As long as we feel like it.
Till we run out of things to talk about, I guess. Or you have to leave. If you have to drop out, that's no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. It's not that. I just didn't want to trespass on anybody's time here. I just want to say, like, before we really get started, like, I'm talking to, like, the viewers real quick. I've not talked with the others about, like, what their intent is behind this episode. I'm sure there's a certain amount of desire to make this entertaining, or even to start debates in the comment section. I don't know. I'm not speaking from them or for them. I just want to say I have been pretty honest over the years that I'm not a fan of the show. Having said that, I recognize it's been around since like 2008 or so. If you take into account the movie, it's about 6 years. And I don't want to play down the fact that for like the generation of Star Wars fans that followed mine, it's kind of like their jumping off point into the expanded universe. I don't want to shit on that too hard. I do respect that. I just want to say, like, my only purpose for joining this discussion is to kind of like highlight the older entries that have been kind of steamrolled over in favor of this show, just to kind of preserve them for the ages. So I just wanted to say that real quick. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows, like, I respect the show even if I don't like it. Now, I said my bit. I'm done.
Okay.
All right, I think that's pretty novel.
Yeah.
All right.
Well said.
Okay, so the way we're going to be doing this is we've made a list of the various retcons throughout the show, and I assume we're just going to go through one at a time and all of us give our opinions on each.
Yeah, some of them
Perhaps we could go in order, like, of who says what and then just move on.
Yeah, we'll sort of roll off like we usually do. Some of them will just be brief, like nods and our own opinions.
Exactly.
Some we can go into more depth with, because obviously some retcons are more significant than others.
We should probably start from least to greatest,
Yeah.
Well, just go through in numerical order because it seems we got it set up like that.
Okay, so we've made the list. Shall we get started?
We shall. First on the list, Gallia and her new death.
Yes, her various death. Okay.
What are your
Well,
opinions
for
on
those
it?
of you who don't know, Adi Gallia's original death was in Volume 7 of the old Dark Horse Clone Wars comic series. I forget, what was the name of the issue?
It was Obsession number 4.
Yes, but in TCW, as I'm sure a lot of you know, Savage Opress kills her. So, opinions? Anybody?
My attitude
Sorry, you go first. Go on.
my attitude here is pretty simple because the death itself is fine if a little, understated. Like there's no drama attached to it. Like it's the sort of thing that's meant to kick the audience in the gut and tell them these guys are a real threat. But the problem is they do it by killing a character that we, the audience, don't really care about because she hasn't been featured all that heavily. And the death itself is fine. The main problem is mostly just how it detracts from General Grievous by taking away one of his most prominent kills, because in the original comic, she got killed in a fight with Grievous. He split his arms in the middle of the fight, grabbed her by the throat, and then ran her through with his two lightsabers. Like, yeah, that was a pretty vicious death.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it kind of set up Grievous's, ruthlessness and just how far he's willing to go to win. But then when Savage Opress does it, it's just like, it's just a big dumb brute doing big dumb brute things, because Opress was never a good character.
I will say this. I do think, she did deserve better. If you're gonna kill Adi Gallia, at least have a more high class character be the one that kills her. And I do think if between the two of them, I guess you could almost say Grievous more so deserves to kill her, as morbid as that sounds. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean to Adi Gallia here. I actually really like Adi Gallia. I grew up reading those Jedi Apprentice books where she was featured really heavily with Qui-Gon, so I really enjoyed her as a character growing up. But I will say that, her death was pretty unsatisfying, and admittedly, her fight with Grievous was a little. I mean, I'm not saying it was the best fight ever, but I am saying that her being killed by Grievous at least is a bit more respectful in a sense.
For me, I don't think I disagree with what you guys have said. It's just like, for me, the big deal wasn't that Savage killed her or even the way he killed her. I just didn't understand why her and not any other person.
It was the same for me, yeah. Why it could have been anyone else, but they put her in the episode.
Yeah, particularly because she already had a death, so you could have chosen somebody who didn't, like Eeth Koth or somebody, so that it would just avoid like a pointless retcon. Retconning is okay, but when it's pointless, I really have to question it. And for me, like, that was the big problem with that. Not the way she died, but just it didn't seem like they needed to do that. Also, I mean, if there's a group that could correct me on this, it would be one of you guys. But I think that she was the only council member that Grievous had killed. Is that wrong? Because if she is, that also is something I thought, and that kind of bothered me because it's the only one he had.
Yeah, possibly. I can't recall anyone else.
I mean, he fought several council members, but he never killed. I don't think he killed anyone else.
Definitely he defeated a lot. But...
Unless you count that deleted scene where he kills Shakti,
which we don't.
Oh, yeah.
It's a deleted scene, so.
Well, I'm just saying for clarification's sake, because if I don't say it, there's gonna be a guy in the comments who said, "Well,
yeah, fair enough."
Yeah. So I'm just trying to cover all the bases here.
He does defeat a fair few, including Shakti, of course. But there was always one that confused me. Why didn't he kill her? He just wrapped her up in an electrical chain. But
yeah, that is perplexing.
Yeah, I suppose if he respected her or something, which he should after that fight. But yeah, for me, the biggest deal about Adi Gallia being killed the way she was the fact that he could have been anyone else. And also, if they had to use her, they should have made it a bit more of a moment for Obi-Wan, because this is the closest master to him after Yoda and Qui-Gon. I mean, she was around whenever he was around Siri, the first love of his life. She was almost like a mother figure, where Qui-Gon was a father. Not to like a great degree, but you know what I mean. That right. On a slight level.
They could have played it up in the show. Like, they would have had to build it up for like episodes prior to this for it to have any sort of impact on him. Like, as it is, it's just like one of his comrades falls and he's there to see it. It's no more than.
Yeah, it is a pain.
Okay.
But that's that one spoken about, I think. Anyway. Any other thoughts?
I think we covered it.
Okay. Next one is a big one, I know, for you, Matt. Quinlan
Oh.
Vos's
I
personality
don't know.
transplant.
Yes, Quinlan Vos.
Yeah.
Go
As
first
far as
on
I'm
this one.
concerned, as far as I'm concerned, it never happened.
Very
Here,
nice.
here. It's a travesty. It's a disaster. The less said of that terrible episode, the better.
Yeah, even someone like me who does actually like TCW, I will say, what was the point of changing his personality so much? I mean, if you look, you have Quinlan Vos, who's one of the most, you know, dark, one of the most brooding characters in Star Wars, really, who's very stern, and then you turn him into I don't even know, what would you describe
like
that?
A surfer
dude.
hippie
Yeah,
person.
kooky dude, bro, or something like
Yeah.
that.
He's like someone you would he's like someone you would find at like downtown San Diego Beach.
Yeah.
They
He's
turned
like-
him. They turned him into Jeff Lebowski. That's what they
Yeah.
did. They turned him
I
into
mean,
Jeff Lebowski.
I mean, to be fair, like I wasn't expecting him to be exactly like when they said they were gonna have him in the episode. Like I wasn't expecting him to be exactly like how he was in the comics, but I was expecting at least a little bit more of a similarity than what we got. I mean, what we got was just a complete 180 from what we all know Quinlan Vos as, at least as far as personality goes. Honestly,
Yeah.
the only thing they did get right for him was his design.
Yeah, and I think they
Yeah, that was-
basically just looked at his
no problem with
design
that.
and judged it based on stereotypical
Oh, and
stuff.
and I guess his tracking ability. They got that too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, they got like some of the basics down. Like they got 2/3 of the basics down, but like they missed the most important one, which would be his character.
Mm-hmm.
So
All
kind of ruined it.
style, no substance.
Yeah.
It's another one of those instances where Dave Filoni is trying to prove to the audience that he actually cares about the expanded universe when really he's just like George Lucas. Just mine it for any details you find interesting, but anything you don't like, feel free to ignore it. That's
Whoa.
That's their mentality, in my view.
I
Ouch,
don't know.
dude.
I think he tries. I don't think it was a
No, I think
almost
I think he
disrespectful
definitely
venture.
does.
He's just he does mess up quite a lot. I mean, there are certain things that they put in the show that shouldn't be there by rights compared to the other retcons they do, but they still try. You know, they get a lot right.
Yeah, don't not give him any credit, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so Quinlan Vos, bad idea. I mean, to be fair, maybe they'll rectify it in the Ventress Quinlan Vos novel coming up. You never know.
They'll have to. They can't make a book with Ventress with that character. They're going to
Yeah.
have to go back to the original material for that, surely.
Okay, so next up.
That would be Grievous. Grievous.
Ah, yes. Speaking of changes,
Yes.
they definitely changed Grievous up a bit.
I suppose
Well,
this one's
I mean,
more based on the
a
film.
buffoon.
Oh, sorry, you go first, Matt.
He's a buffoon.
Yeah.
He's gone from the guy who could take on 4 or 5 Jedi at one time to somebody who got his ass handed to him by Captain Tarples.
Defeated by a bunch of Gungans. Not his best moment.
All right, everyone. I actually have a little scripted segment that I'm actually going to read off for this.
Okay.
Are you serious?
Some time ago, I was planning on doing a film review of Revenge of the Sith, and I had this whole little diatribe about Grievous where I just freak out about how he was fucked up in the film. And the thing is, his portrayal in the series, their goal was clearly to be consistent with the movie rather than the pre-existing EU. So, yeah, here we go.
Oh, everybody.
Here comes the Nerd Rage
brace for
ranter.
impact.
I am a long-standing fan of the original Clone Wars micro-series, where Grievous made his debut. And in his debut, he takes on 5 Jedi and totally whips them. I was expecting something badass and epic in this movie. And the movie teases us with that, having Grievous walking through these doors looking like the embodiment of pure badass and snarling a little like a barely restrained, bloodthirsty lunatic. And then he doubles over hacking. Instead of the Terminator of Jedi, we get an asthmatic Russian with an incomprehensible accent. Essentially, the character of General Grievous has been castrated, reduced from the Terminator of Jedi to a ridiculous stock villain. George Lucas claims the reason why he did this is because he wanted Grievous to be a mustache-twirling old-style villain, basically a cowardly schemer who runs away at the first opportunity. And Lucas essentially neutered what could have been one of the most badass movie villains of all time because he wanted to turn him into something he already had. Lucas completely failed to realize that he already had an absolutely perfect old-style villain in Dooku. What does Dooku do in Attack of the Clones? He does a lot of horrible things, and then he runs away. What is Dooku's primary vocation? He is a schemer who prefers to avoid getting his hands dirty. Dooku was an absolutely perfect old-style villain. Everything Lucas could have wanted. Plus, he was played by Christopher Lee. But instead of using him, Lucas kills him off in the first 15 minutes of the movie and then goes on to make a joke out of what was up till now one of the most badass and fascinating Star Wars characters ever conceived. And TCW continues this. All right, I'm done.
Thorough assessment.
I don't know how to follow that up.
I think certain haters of the show probably just came.
Really, Matt? Really?
Way to lower the tone. Well, it was already low to start with, I suppose.
I'm done. I'm so done.
Basically, what I said, they don't really move away from the film in any regard. It's not TCW's fault. It's Lucas's on this front. But it is a shame. I wish they would have drawn more on the original Grievous than they did.
Aside from I agree. I mean, aside from that awful design, the original Grievous was a lot more menacing.
We've spoken about this before, haven't we? I disagree with you on that one. I
hate the original micro series Grievous design. I don't care what any of y'all say. It's awful.
I get why you don't like it, but I don't think it's the actual design itself. It's just the difference in style. The actual aesthetic of Grievous is almost the same. It's just the style of drawing that makes it look different. I mean, more extenuated angles, the curve of his leg, okay, granted the rib cage is all going was a bit weird, but
and the fact that he's 6 feet taller.
Yeah, makes him more menacing.
Yeah.
I'm not don't have any problems with
in my
that.
view, the only purpose of Grievous was to be Dooku's attack dog. And for a character like that, you want a character who's a reliable, menacing killer who's basically unstoppable. The idea being that the only thing keeping him in check is Dooku saying, okay, stop. Heel, dog, heel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It would have been better.
To be fair, he did have a few decent parts in the Son of Dathomir comics. But that's just my personal opinion.
He did get to kill Mother Talzin, and goddamn, I hate Mother Talzin as a character. She is such a disaster.
Hey, save that for later. Save that for later.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I don't really talk much. Well, I don't really have much to say about her later on. It's just like, mostly I'm just directly addressing what was listed. So, shall we move on?
Yeah, that's Grievous.
Next one up.
This one's probably my favourite of the retcons. Well, you can call it retcon. Ahsoka Tano.
Yes, everyone's favorite Padawan.
Well, it wasn't to start with, wasn't it? She was a train wreck to begin with, but then very quickly became one of the most popular. I mean, she's certainly one of my favourite characters.
Yeah, I'll come out and say it. I really do like Ahsoka Tano as a character, at least from season 3 onward.
Yeah, she's all right before that, but it's just the whole Sky guy. Oh, stupid. The writing.
But you really
terrible.
see her come into her own by the end of the series, and I really do respect that. And I really like, for starters, the voice actor who portrays her does an excellent job. I forget what's her name, Colin?
Ashley Eichstein or something.
Yeah, and it was actually something.
I think she does an excellent job. I really like her as a character. I really like how they kind of incorporate elements of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and even Plo Koon in her personality. She has an excellent design, very unique. And, I mean, this might sound strange, but I actually think it's really cool seeing a female in Star Wars, at least on screen, kick some ass, because we didn't get any of that in the movies. Or
Why would that
really...
sound strange?
What?
Why would that sound strange?
Well, I don't know. just throwing it out there.
Oh, okay.
Just from a personal standpoint, I think it's pretty dang awesome that we're seeing a female kick ass, and I'm really cool for that, because I'm all for equality.
Okay, so...
Yeah. I am too. I want to make that plain. But, how many did we already have that just didn't get featured?
Quite a few. I'm not saying she's like the best female Jedi, but I am saying she's the best on screen.
She's the best we've had, I think, possibly.
But,
one of.
She's like one of the only ones that was allowed to be. I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, she got the most screen time. And I'm glad she did, because she's an excellent Jedi. I personally think she's a far better Jedi than Anakin. Not more powerful, bear in mind, but better. I mean, she's constantly talking to him about
Well,
patience and
you just kind of touched on it. Like that's my biggest problem was the idea behind her. I don't understand having Anakin have a Padawan. I still don't understand that. Like
Here,
I
here.
know that there's plenty of like explanations that somebody she's supposed to be like a lesson for him and how to. I don't care. It doesn't make sense for his original character. It just doesn't. He's like a Padawan himself who has all kinds of issues, and that's his character through and through. Like through his whole life, he's got issues. That's him in a nutshell. So placing somebody like in his charge, it just doesn't make sense.
I agree that it was extremely bad decision, but I'm happy with the results we got from it. So
Totally.
I mean,
Well,
could just as easily have the same character just with a different master. I'd have no complaint.
Plo Koon.
Yeah,
yeah,
Plo Koon.
I am totally with Matt all the way on this. Like, I like the character of Ahsoka herself, but pairing her off with Anakin was a really bad move because it's like in the original continuity, it's like Anakin was only knighted 6 months before Revenge of the Sith. He spent most of the war as a Padawan, with the war being his rite of passage. But as soon as you throw Ahsoka into that thing, you completely mess up that whole arc. Instead of the focus being on how Anakin develops, it's how Anakin affects Ahsoka. And Anakin basically becomes second fiddle in his own story when you throw her in. And,
yeah, this kind of leads into one of our other points. Actually, it's further down the list, but we'll talk about it now. Anakin's knighting time frame, because this one decision does influence her. She's a great character, but she, like you say, she damages Anakin's sort of storyline in the Clone Wars. It's now it seems to be that it's about a year into the Clone Wars or something similar, where Anakin is knighted, and then almost immediately afterwards, he's given a Padawan.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's how it works at the moment.
I'm pretty sure that, yeah.
Yeah, and then the next 2 years are spent with sort of Ahsoka being the focus. But I agree, it does kind of detriment Anakin, Anakin's rite of passage. But again, I love Ahsoka, so I'm not worried about that too much. I don't like Anakin. Although in the Clone Wars, Anakin is the best representation of Anakin so far.
I will say,
I gotta say, I actually think the best representation of Anakin was in the original Clone Wars micro series, because they took the brief from Episode 2 of Anakin Skywalker being this disturbed sociopath and ran with it, and they made a character who is absolutely terrifying, and I loved that. It's like when this guy was angry, you were like, ooh.
Well,
but that doesn't. But that doesn't make sense to who we thought Anakin was when old Ben is telling that story to Luke. He's not somebody you're gonna look up to. He's somebody you're gonna be totally afraid of. He's not a great Jedi Knight who you'd respect on the battlefield for his wisdom. No, he's a crazy fucking psychopath that nobody would ever want to be near. Which which I personally don't think fits entirely well with. In the original story, how old Ben was like, yes, your father was a great Jedi and a good friend. He was an excellent pilot.
Hang on.
Hang on, Matt's trying to say something.
I agree with
Matt.
you guys. Hello?
Yeah, that means it, yeah.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I agree with both of you guys. I just think, like, Connor has, like, a tendency to, say one thing, like, in, like, the most extreme way possible. Like, when he calls him, like, just a sociopath or whatever, I don't think, like, that's not just what he was, though. I mean, the most extreme thing he does is either going to be when he started hammering into Ventress during their duel, or when he killed, I can't remember the name of the species, the Tambor species, that were experimenting on the citizens of that planet. He wasn't totally unjustified for doing that. You know what I mean? He probably shouldn't have, but you understand the anger. And so for me, like, if you're going to show him as, like, a raging psychopath, like, that's the best version of that, because he was justified in a sense and then took it too far. It went from justice to revenge, and that is his character.
Yeah, he does have to.
Fair enough.
Try
like,
and balance
he can't
that line.
just be, like, you can't have him portrayed as, like, a Luke Skywalker, because that's also out of character. Like, he's not the perfect Jedi. Sure, that's kind of what Obi-Wan's describing in that scene that you mentioned, where you talk about, like, how he's a good friend and blah blah. But he also is flawed, and you need to show that too. Even in this version, that does creep through with his anger issues, and so I don't have a problem with that. I actually do like both versions of Anakin, the one from the old and the new. So I don't see one that's right and the other wrong.
Same. I just see the previous Clone Wars series as the younger Anakin. You know, that's his Padawan stage, or an early knighting, and then TCW is what brings in the Padawan, and he becomes the sort of master role is what develops him into a more likable character for me. And again, I enjoy the fact that Ahsoka is obviously a better Jedi.
Yeah.
But not to the detriment of him, because he's still likable in that series. So,
Yeah.
unlike
I think
every
I
other
trust her a little
representation.
more readily than I trust him. Just saying.
Well, just going back to what you said about what Obi was describing in the original Star Wars about what Anakin was, don't forget that especially in the original trilogy, Kenobi had a tendency to play fast and loose with the truth.
Yeah, he does
Fair
lie
enough.
pretty much every time he
Fair
opens his
enough.
Push
mouth.
his own agenda. And the other thing is, he was probably looking back on things with these rose-tinted glasses, because it's like he knows what Anakin became, but he didn't want to dwell on that. He'd rather remember him as he was and focus on the positive aspects rather than remember, oh God, so many signs that this kid was crazy and I didn't see any of them. Oh God, I failed so hard. Like,
Fair
he
enough.
doesn't want to live like that, because who would?
True.
He's already a
I think he
hermit
was
in the middle of a
wrong.
desert.
I think
Yeah,
he was
seriously.
more on-
What's sorry, Matt? We interrupted.
Matt?
I think he was leaning more towards being honest when he was talking, not just like playing up the legend of Anakin Skywalker for Luke. I don't think he was lying, or at least I didn't get that impression. I just think Star Wars is like a unique beast in that you have to realize like that was written like decades ago, and now they made the decision to actually do the prequels and try to show Anakin as like this hero. They kind of failed on that in the actual movies. Then they got it right in the cartoon. So you have like this amalgam of a character that you're trying to, you know, turn into one cohesive storyline. It doesn't quite work. So there's going to be moments like, yeah, he did lie about certain things to Luke, but I don't think that was one of them.
Yeah.
It doesn't intentionally lie so much. It's just
No.
like I say, like Connor says, his rose-tinted glasses they kind of get in the way. Because if he'd given a full analysis of Luke, if he'd sort of sat down and said, "What was my father like?" and he went through everything, I don't think Luke would be very encouraged.
Yeah.
I think Luke would just like walk out of the hut.
Nope.
Yeah.
Like,
And he could
all
have,
done.
yeah, he could have said, well, the last time I saw him, he killed your mother, but probably not the best way to lead into this.
I left
God.
him no limbs and burning, or one limb and burning.
How did my father die? I chopped his legs and arms off and left him on a volcano.
Anyway, so that's the Ahsoka and Anakin set done. Moving on to the Mortis arc, another huge one.
Ooh,
Retcon
yes.
of the entire Force itself, almost.
Well, I
Well,
wouldn't
Not
say it's a
entirely,
retcon
not
of the
entirely, but
entire
it's a
Force.
retcon that alters our perspective of the entire
True.
Force.
I
at least to an
personally
extent.
really, you guys know how I feel about the Mortis arc. It was honestly one of my favorite arcs in TCW because of all the new possibilities it opened and some of the questions it answered. I will say it does offer a very different, way of looking at the Force when you have like these godlike deities. But I do think it does sort of interpretation of some of like the philosophies of the Force. The light, the dark, the balance. How I'm not quite sure what words to use for this. How such ideals could be represented in these beings who truly represent, certain viewpoints on the Force. So I just think that's an interesting way to look at the whole argument of which side of the Force is truly the most beneficial.
Well, on my end, the Mortis arc itself was fine.
Hello, we're back. Sorry about that, but this one decided to join us. Say hello to Antoine.
Hey guys, sorry, I was away.
But he's here now, so
I am
that's
here
what
now.
matters.
Yeah.
I've moved Grey Jedi to my left now, so Antoine can resume his usual location.
Yeah, get out of my spot.
Nah. Wait, I will be looking this way. Nah. There you go. That's gonna work. That's gonna work.
It is going to work. Anyway, we were at the Mortis arc. Yes,
Mortis,
we were.
yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it was me talking
Yes, it was.
Yes.
before Antoine rudely interrupted us.
Ah.
Yeah.
Wait. You guys are
Okay.
considering Mortis a retcon? How's that a retcon?
Well, it was more a retcon of our view of the Force because now we've got new stuff.
Oh,
added.
I see. Okay, I can agree with that.
Like bringing in like
Okay.
these god beings.
Right, I agree with
Or
that.
avatars
All
or
right.
whatever.
So my viewpoint on the Mortis arc is I got my own ideas on how it works and what the relationships are, but I think the arc itself was fine. The main problem I have with it is that it's basically George Lucas running damage control for the prequel trilogy because he never provided any explanation for the prophecy of the Chosen One in the films, and it seems to me that he did the Mortis arc to rectify this, hoping that, oh, I did this thing over here that explains everything. You just got to watch this for the movie to make sense. And, I really love the expanded universe, but even I say that the casual film goer can't be expected to check up on every little bit of tie-in material to make the films make sense. If it's not explained in the movie, it's not explained at all. George Lucas, your word is not enough.
But I thought it was pretty well explained in the movies. It's just the prophecy is pretty blunt. It's just
we just don't know.
Chosen
It's
one will destroy the
straightforward.
Sith.
I thought in the films, it was pretty straightforward. It's just I see what the Mortis arc did is it just added to it, and it really, really explained how the prophecy fits in a more broader sense, as opposed to in the films where you think it's just involving the war. But what I see the Mortis arc is doing is it's taking this prophecy and really expanding it outwards, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of an unnecessary addition though to it, because I thought it was an unnecessary addition to have the Mortis arc, further explain the prophecy. I thought it was he was trying to expand it, but in doing so, he kind of diluted it a bit, I guess. That makes it's kind of the same with the midichlorians criticism is that he over-explained the Force. He tried to scientifically explain it, and it was just like a little too much going on, I think.
I've never understood the hate people have for the midichlorians. It makes
I never
perfect
understood
sense.
either.
It's all the Force is always run in the family, therefore it's biological, therefore it must have some sort of physical presence.
Yeah,
So-
there's got to be some way to measure it.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's not like a limit. If you have like 5 midichlorians against someone's 1,000, you can still be powerful. You just you just have more of a disadvantage.
It's a
You have
little bit more
you have more of a curve to get over.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Obi-Wan. He was barely qualified as a Jedi to start with. Then he goes on to become not necessarily the most powerful, but definitely he can contend with.
Greats.
Yeah, he can contend with the most powerful.
You don't get a unless you're Coleman Trevor.
Alright, sorry, I sidetracked us then. So yeah, my view on the Mortis arc is I enjoyed it, but I don't like it as a overall interpretation of the Force. I like it as a small, like these are certain beings that have heavily interacted and influenced and become attached to the Force, but they're not the conduits of the Force. They're like avatars.
Yeah.
They're people who have come across maybe a strong versions in the Force. They were influenced by it and it changed them, and now they're like unintentional avatars. They're not what the Force doesn't resolve around them. It's nothing to do with them.
Right.
They're just people, almost like Jedi, that have stumbled into a whirlpool of Force energy, come out of it really powerful and influenced by the universe around them. It's nothing more than that for me.
And also the thing with Mortis is, I always took it because at the end of it, it seemed like it all happened in Anakin's head. So I was kind of happy that was the case because okay, I can kind of disregard that because it totally happened in Anakin's head and everything. Was they were just in the ship, the cockpit the whole time.
Just a fever
I
dream.
was just about to say that. That's the takeaway I had.
That's
Same
what
here.
saves it because it's like, oh, okay, that's a vision he had, whatever.
Could be.
Yeah, it's sort of the Mortis arc is sort of what you want from it, isn't it? It's nothing concrete. No one looks to it as the defining view on the Force. It's just you have your own interpretations, which is I think they pulled off well.
I just really enjoy it for its uniqueness and how much it really stands out, as opposed to the other arcs and all the new ideas it puts in. But that's just me.
It goes back to what Connor said last episode about how the Clone Wars is extremely ambitious. It tries new things. It approaches the existing concepts in different directions. Which Rebels hasn't done yet, but granted, Clone Wars didn't in the first. Clone Wars didn't in the first series, I know, but that's what his viewpoint at the moment. But yeah, I like it. It was good, but I can see why people don't like it.
It's one of my favorite. It's honestly one of my favorite arcs in the whole series. It's not. It's not my favorite, but it's like if I were to make a top 10 list, which I probably will eventually at some point. Hint, hint. But
Well, we could make a
definitely
collaboration
put it
with that
in
one.
there.
We could all do that. Try and get.
That could be.
if you wanted to. Also, I found that I liked about the arc, it introduced Ahsoka to the dark side and rounded off her perspective a bit without her actually having to fall to the dark side, because I always found that,
Yes.
which was nice.
It gives you It gives you a chance to see her in that light.
Yeah, and it's not a personal weakness. She just gets overpowered. You know, there's nothing you can do about it, which is always nice. Has anyone else got anything to say on that one?
I think that's it.
Matt, have you said anything about it? Don't think so.
I don't have any stronger opinions than what's already been said.
Okay. So shall we move on then?
Yes.
Okay, that's Evan Piell's death then.
Aye.
What did
My
you think
Doesn't
about
attitude
mean he means the Jedi.
Yeah. My attitude towards Evan Piell's death is pretty simple. It partially retcons the Coruscant Knights trilogy, a book series I enjoy, so it's not something I hate outright, but I resent it just a little bit.
Just from the fact that it's a lingering hatred of a retcon.
Yeah,
No
I mean,
more.
I honestly see it as such a minor retcon that it doesn't really bother me that much. I mean, granted, like, the Coruscant Knights series is a good series. I'm not downplaying it or anything, but I don't see his death as such a world-shattering retcon. I mean, it's Evan Piell, for Pete's sake, so I'm just not very bothered by it, because in the big picture, it's not that big of a deal.
Well,
Let's be honest, he's not. What?
That's why I only resent it. It doesn't cause me rage. It's just something that, it's like I hear about it, I'm a little agitated. It's not.
You have a rage scale.
Yes, I do have a rage scale.
And it never goes below calm. It's just rage and then slightly levels, different scales of rage.
Annoyance, rage.
Well, agitation.
And then at the very top, the very top is Sith eyes.
Agitation, irritation, frustration, annoyance, frustration, rage. Something like that.
And it's like I take off my glasses last night, and you all have very visible reactions. It was. Yeah.
Hey, remind me, is Coruscant Knights, that takes place after Revenge of the Sith?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to remember that series because I'm not really recalling that
It's
right
kind
now.
of an obscure series, to be honest. I mean, it's not the most popular.
What's his face in it? Was Nick Rostu?
Yes.
The guy from Shatterpoint? Okay, I remember.
Yes.
The only thing I remember from that is that he equated Carvaster to Vader, or he put Vader above Carvaster.
And he helped Pavan.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember that series that much at all. So I don't have any feelings about this one.
The way
Exactly.
The way I look at this death is that it's a retcon death done well. It introduces us to a new story. It's a good story, if not great, and it ties into the greater canon. I mean, how many times was Evan Piell mentioned in the Tarkin book? It sort of brings him into greater significance.
Often.
Yeah, it adds to that. So it's not like Adi Gallia's death, where it was just any random character would have done.
It was just done. It it never came up again. Had no real impact. With Evan Piell, you really felt like his death was meaningful, and I personally, so
far more people are going to be introduced to him now through that than they would have done across.
Yeah, because he's not exactly like an A-list Jedi or anything. I mean, so at least they shed light on him, which is cool, because he's a pretty cool character, and it's cool seeing him portrayed that way. Plus, he had such a good voice.
Yes.
I don't know who voiced him, but damn,
it was a good voice for him. I liked it. So anyone else got any views on that?
Matt?
Never saw the episode. Didn't care about the character that much to begin with.
Okay, all right. So Eeth Koth being alive again.
Yes, I actually dig this retcon because first of all, I really like Eeth Koth for some reason. I just think he's a cool character, but also his original death was really, really dumb. I mean, he just so happened to be in a gunship that blew up, and hell, it was originally stated that Sora Bulk was in that same gunship that blew up. So if he can survive it, then I see no reason why Eeth Koth, a Zabrak might.
I didn't even know he died. I thought he had never. I thought he just was never addressed.
Yeah, well, it was.
It was mentioned in one of the source books that particular crash killed him and Sora Bulk. It's just Sora Bulk's death was retconned by the comics, which brought him in, but no one did anything about Eeth Koth, and they brought him in because it's like, well, whatever. His death was a background thing, and well, if Sora Bulk survived that crash, well, of course Eeth Koth could have. So,
of course,
yeah.
I always thought it was just because they changed actors, and so they created a different character.
Yeah, that was an influence.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
they did split it because of the skin tones of the
Yeah.
There was separate characters being different, so they just made two
didn't
characters to
even-
avoid confusion.
I hadn't realized they even attempted to explain that. Whatever.
Yeah.
And again brings an unknown character into somewhat of the limelight.
I actually really liked his portrayal in TCW. You know, I always liked him, even though he didn't do too much. I always liked Eeth Koth in the comics, and that fight with Grievous was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
You know, I really enjoyed it. So, oh, by the way, hey, I guess you could count that as a council member Grievous defeated.
Well, like I say, that's why I said he was one of the ones I considered. Him, Jacques T, obviously Adi Gallia at the time. But it's just deaths we were talking about before.
Oh, we were just talking about deaths.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, and I thought it was really
kills, rather.
refreshing seeing him again. You know, like a great design, great voice. You know, I dug it, and they kept him around too. They didn't just kill him.
Yeah.
He was in several episodes. He was a recurring character, and it was like, yeah, all right, Eeth Koth, good for you, man.
Yeah. That's why I thought they could have killed him off instead of just like not addressing him again. But whatever.
He would have been a good character to kill or get killed by Savage, instead in Gallia's place.
It would have been kind of this Zabrak versus Zabrak fight, and it's like, yeah.
That would have been a brutal fight, actually, if you think about it. Yeah. It would have been a really vicious little fight there.
But I really dig Eeth Koth, and hint, I'm going to use him eventually. Right, Connor?
Oh, yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more.
Yes. But so Eeth Koth coming back, I'm all for it.
Agreed. It only adds to the universe,
it only
which is always
adds,
good.
It doesn't subtract anything. It's a perfectly reasonable retcon that gave us a lot of cool episodes and stories. So, here.
Okay, well, the next one was the Anakin knighting time frame, but we've already covered that.
Yeah,
so
we covered that.
It's moving on straight to Barriss Offee and.
I actually do have a comment about Anakin's knighting.
Oh, okay. Do you want to mention something?
Go for it.
In regards to Ahsoka, because I saw that there was a criticism about Anakin, the Clone Wars being like his rite of passage. But I actually do prefer the bond, the small little bond that Anakin and Ahsoka had in regards to their jadedness to the Jedi Order. Like when Ahsoka was leaving, and she was like, "I just have to do this on my own. I can't. I don't need the Jedi's help. I don't need your help." And then they had like a moment where he's like, "You know what? Like, I understand where you're coming from." And then that right there is like
brilliant.
The kinds of seeds that we kind of needed, I think, even in Revenge of the Sith. So his turn in seemed so quick, because in the movies it seemed like it was like that. When you have a series like Clone Wars, where you have several episodes, you can see the seed planted in several steps. And that was one of them. And it was a very subtle one, but it was a very extremely powerful one, because he had this strong bond with his Padawan, because they're very much like the same, the hotheads, headstrong, the Jedi prospects, and they bonded on that level. And for them to have that moment, I felt was really important for Anakin's ongoing story, especially going forward into Revenge of the Sith. So.
Yeah, I think they hit all the right notes with just that scene.
That scene was perfect. I think it's probably my favorite scene of all.
Seriously,
it's just moments like that justify her existence and putting her as Anakin's Padawan.
Yes.
There are problems with it, but
it makes her such a great character.
There are problems with the decision, but I feel it's always made up by the fact that we got Tano and such a good character. But yeah, we move on to Barriss Offee and her turn to the dark side.
Yes, Barriss Offee, quite the 360 with that one.
This is another little thingy that I got a scripted segment for, because this is something I'm actually going to be saying in a video that I'm making down the road, where I use Barriss Offee as a combatant. So,
won't that be spoiling it then if you tell us it?
Yeah.
It's in the opening statements. It's not actually part of the analyses.
Okay.
So,
right, then we'll start with Connor then.
So, believe it or not, I'm actually okay with the idea of retconning Barriss Offee as a Dark Jedi, as keeping her around in this manner provides some very intriguing story opportunities, and could possibly allow her to develop as a notable figure, as opposed to just being another dead Jedi. However, I have to be honest, the way the writers of TCW went about it left me cold. Whenever Barriss appeared in the series, it was never as a main character in her own right, but always as a backup to Ahsoka Tano. It was clear to me that as far as the writers were concerned, Barriss's only purpose was to be a cardboard cutout for Ahsoka to bounce off of and react to, and never to be a serious character to be fleshed out and developed. As a result, her fall to the dark side is never adequately explained, and we have nothing to link Barriss Offee, the loyal and gifted Jedi student, with Barriss Offee, the vicious Dark Jedi terrorist. This is something that I see as a huge mistake on the part of the writers of TCW, and as a word of advice to those who have gone on to write for Rebels, I say this. Don't waste time producing 3-episode story arcs dedicated to a bunch of minor characters that we, the audience, neither care about nor want to care about, the Padawan arc being the big example. Focus on characters who are actually relevant to your continuing storylines. And yeah, that's my piece.
Which might have been the case because I know their season 6 was kind of rushed. I don't know if they have more plans for Barriss or not. But yeah, I agree that her stuff was definitely kind of out of the blue, and it would have been great to see where she was coming from. Like, why did she had such a change of heart? Because she's a student of Luminara Unduli, who's like also in the same light as Obi-Wan, who is a very dedicated Jedi to the code. You know, not just being on the light side, but just to the Jedi Order. And to have that kind of instructor and then come out that way, like what happened? Like what experience did you have?
It's like Connor says, it opens up so many doors for stories that were never told. And if anything, that's the worst crime you could commit. It's like you're like dangling the shiny thing in front of us, but we can't reach it because you're holding it too far.
I want to see her redemption story. That's the thing I want to take out of that. As long as if they do that and they do it well, I think it'll be a
it could work, and it'll justify her death.
Despite
Order 66.
Yeah, despite the.
I gotta say, I'm actually in the opposite camp. I don't want to see her redemption story. I want to see her brought in as an Inquisitor in Rebels. I want to see her villain arc taken all the way. Yeah, but yeah, I want to see the villain arc taken all the way.
Antoine's
the problem with that is her motivations for turning in the first place. While we saw them to be a bit flimsy and didn't make much sense, she was very much against the conflict. That was why she turned. She didn't want to keep fighting.
She was against the Jedi Council supporting the war.
Yeah, she then went a bit crazy. Like I think they suit me. But she
it's not like she was justified, but it wasn't like she wasn't craving for power's sake.
No, she was very much trying to end or disrupt the conflict. You know, she wanted to seek the Jedi to return to their roots, and it wouldn't make sense for her, I don't think, to go and become, you know, puppets of the Inquisitors for that, if that was the case. But I always saw that she thought that she'd, you know, get her lightsaber taken away and focus on the healing core or something of the Jedi, you know, realize the error of her ways and redeem herself by aiding Jedi.
I do like that idea, though.
The Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could do some good with that, I think. I think
that would be pretty cool.
I think undercuts her.
There should be more than just that one Inquisitor, I think.
There probably will be. Just give it a couple seasons.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think?
Just like bipolar. I mean, she goes from being a Jedi healer to, I don't like violence, I'm going to set off a bomb.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it just, they were playing with a really big idea, and I give them credit for that. Like, there was some advanced storytelling, and they were taking, you know, the horrors of war and all that, but it just didn't live up to its own potential, that story arc, in my opinion. And I don't want to see her redemption story. Like, they were going to expel Ahsoka for something she didn't do. You're going to let the guilty one be redeemed?
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
As long as she shows she actually shows remorse, though. I mean, anyone's redeemable for anything.
Just not from within. I just don't think it should be sanctioned by like the Jedi. Like, if she can redeem herself on her own, I don't care. But she shouldn't be allowed to hang around or like join some Jedi Peace Corps or whatever. Like, she should just be in handcuffs somewhere.
Carted off to prison and left to rot.
Oh god, yeah, because that solves all the problems in the world.
Yes, there's no way.
The Jedi don't think like that. That's the problem. They'd be very much like people.
Well, that would be an area where like I disagree with the Jedi. I mean, like she really like she went way off the deep end.
Yeah, but if she returns and she feels remorse and suffers, and they take away her lightsaber. She's not allowed to fight. She's not allowed to. She's very much watched for the rest of her life, but she can do some good. You know, she can redeem herself in that way. I mean, if Vader gets a redemption just before he dies for everything he's done, then she can.
He barely gets one.
Yeah, I mean,
he barely can.
He returns to the light side. If he had continued to live, he would have done some good from that point forward, and that's something to fight for rather than just punishing someone for past deeds. If they actually feel the remorse, I think you should always forgive for anything.
Jedi don't believe in capital punishment.
I didn't say she should be like getting her head cut off.
Well, no, or if imprisoned. You know, it just doesn't serve anything. It just means that she's just sat there feeling guilty and remorseful.
Well, good.
Yeah, but that's punishment. Nothing. That's basically self-satisfaction. You know, you're just saying, oh well, we feel better that they're suffering for the people she killed. You know.
No, I mean, you think about like the punishment they were going to give Ahsoka for what they thought she did, and then when it turns out Barriss has done what she's done, forgiveness. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like she really. I'm not saying there's no way she could atone for what she did, but she should probably die in the process if I was writing the story.
That could work.
Either way works. I personally like to see the Jedi show some redemption, though, show some forgiveness, because it kind of gets glossed over. I mean, Yoda going, once you step down the Darth Path forever, will it dominate your destiny? I'm like,
Yoda was wrong.
Yeah, I know Yoda kind of got depressed at that point in his life, I think, and gave up on hope, I think, which is a shame.
Can you blame him? I mean, living in a swamp for so long after you see everything you worked for just get destroyed, I'd get depressed too.
It's Yoda. He can man through it. Obi-Wan does it well enough. Sorry, was that Matt?
Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan. You know why, Colin? Because Obi-Wan is
the quintessential Jedi.
No,
unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt. We spoke over you. What were you going to say?
That's kind of like the point of this era of the Jedi, though, is that they are closed-minded about certain things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I think that is correct, because Yoda is very much a closed-minded Jedi. Like, he's not, like, he's an old school Jedi. He comes from an old cloth, and that's actually a big passage in the Revenge of the Sith novel, is that Yoda simply did not have it, not because he didn't have the skill or anything like that. He just didn't change. The Sith changed. They changed their strategy. Sidious was smart about the way he went about it, but Yoda and the rest of the Jedi, they were still fighting the old Sith. They were, they weren't thinking, oh, this is a political like game or whatever. And then like that realization is what I felt like is part of the reason why he lost, because that realization that the Jedi ultimately were gonna fail, at this point, because this Empire is now a thing. And but yeah, like the old Jedi, or the Jedi of this era, I guess like the Bane to now, or not now, the Empire. Yeah, they're very, very close-minded. And I also, in the Jedi Apprentice book, if you reread that, I hated the Jedi. I hated like Mace and like how they treated Obi-Wan when he was coming up, and I was like, what is this? This isn't like an enlightening experience for a young child. This is damning. And yeah, and I just was like, yeah, these Jedi of this era I never was a huge fan of because of that.
I get where you're coming from, but this sort of thing's more of the intention of the creators. I don't see how all of the philosophies of the Jedi, which are almost flawless in the way they're described, we get instead characters written that fly in the face of it. I mean, there are people like... Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, the thing about like the Jedi being flawed is that they're well-meaning, but still flawed all the same.
Right,
they're flawed
exactly.
In spite of that. I mean, that to me... that's what makes them interesting from a story perspective, because if they were perfect, like truly perfect, they'd be incredibly boring.
But well, yeah, true. But we talk about their flaws. What are their flaws? What is the flaw of the Jedi way?
Well, it depends which era we're talking about, but in this case, they are. I know. In this case, they are.
Dogmatic, close-minded, moral absolutists.
All of that is to maintain all of that is not true for every Jedi, because most Jedi get past that the code's simple structure with ease. But also it's a factor of the Order. You have to maintain thousands of Jedi. You have to have a strict rule set and guidelines to make sure there aren't Anakins flying around all over the place. And the people who understand that immediately get over the whole Jedi code thing. It's like, okay, this is set as rules to stop the people who can't expand their mind enough to understand them from going setting crazy. But the people who get it go on to be the Plo Koons, the Obi-Wans.
I agree 100% with Colin.
It's one of the ironies of the story is that the Jedi Council helps create Darth Vader, though, through their stupid rules. If he hadn't been afraid to be in love, who knows what would have happened. That's their fault.
But then you have Obi-Wan, and all the other people who fall in love, and they have no problem. That's a flaw with Anakin, not the Council, because he sees romantic relationship as like
I agree.
You can't impose a law and expect it to like apply universally to everybody that comes from all different species and creeds and all sorts of things. He needed some more time and attention. He didn't need to just be told, you're not allowed to be in love. And that was only like one example. Like, I'm not saying like that has nothing to do with Barriss, for example. I'm just saying they're overreactionary. Like, something bad happens, so they lay down a law so that this never happens again. good. I mean, it's a good concept, but practically, it typically doesn't work.
It's
Not
the
for
same with
everybody.
parenting too. Like, if you look at parenting in the same way, like that's what Jedi's are. The masters are parents of these prospects.
Yeah.
There's several codes of parenting in American culture. I think it's called authoritative, overly permissive, and I can't remember the other one. The one that's like in between. The Jedi are more kind of authoritative. They just say, "These are the rules. You do it because I'm your parent, and that's it." Versus, like he was saying, like with Anakin, he does need a little bit more attention. You can't just say to someone like that, "No, you can't do it because I say so." No, you can't do it for this reason, this reason, that reason. You have to, explain it or find some sort of middle ground, and then like have a dialogue with that person and say, okay, this thing you have, this love you have for this woman, do you think it's a healthy thing? And then you have a dialogue for that. And this is just like going beyond Star Wars. This is just about like how you should like treat people and how you should parent your kids. Treat them as other people. Like listen to what they have to their concerns. Same with like the Jedi and Anakin. They needed to listen to him. And like he said, yeah, the Council did make Vader. Like they stopped him when he needed someone to listen. I remember there was a scene again in Revenge of the Sith where Anakin goes to Yoda and he's like, I'm having these dark feelings, like help me out. And he gives him some dogmatic, like he recites something from like the Jedi code, and it's like, no, Anakin's like, that's not what I wanted. I need like a real answer here. But that's just me. That's just me.
There's a very polite way of saying get over it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
but
that's
those scenes are written by the creators. They're not. If you look at that and then look at the general feel and approach and the ways of the Jedi, do they sync? And in my opinion, they really don't. You see so many cases of the people writing the Jedi and how they act, and it just flies in the face of everything they represent. The first and foremost thing on any Jedi's mind is morality. That's what they care about the most. And everything they do is to try and uphold morality and justice and peace. Not necessarily peace if it goes against justice, but in that order. That him saying to Anakin, don't get attached makes perfect sense, because every relationship should be that case. It doesn't mean he can't feel, but Anakin doesn't understand it. He's like, I want to get attached.
Here's the distinction with that. Yoda knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's trying to say. He doesn't know how to explain it in a meaningful way to Anakin. He just repeats it the way he probably would any other character. It was a very clinical way of addressing his problem. It wasn't like a personal master-student bond going on there, where he was like, hey, which brings me to another thing. Like, there's a conversation in like the Lost episodes or whatever they're called, the final season of Clone Wars.
With Obi-Wan and Anakin about it. Yeah.
Like, I like that scene because Obi-Wan doesn't lose his humanity when it comes to him being a Jedi and enforcing their rules. Other Jedi do, and that's really not up for debate. They're flawed in that way on the whole, and I don't think that that's a writing mistake. I'm not complaining about that. I like that about them.
That's where I disagree. I think it is a mistake because it makes absolutely no sense. Anyone with like any sense knows that it makes no sense.
It's meant to be there to put tension into the story. If it's a mistake, then they would all just be,
gods.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I mean, it just, everything goes, whatever, and they're not like that.
But the way they would handle situations if they were real is not how they handle most situations in the books and the films and everything else. That's the problem I have with them. The things they express, the teachings they go on about, you rarely see them carried through properly, or written properly. Whoa. I mean, especially with how they handle Anakin. Like I say, I mean, Anakin should get it like that. It's not a very difficult concept to understand. No, you can love someone, but don't get to the point where your love interferes with your morality. That's the only thing that matters with the whole attachment and relationships thing. Don't let attachment interfere with morality. And Anakin does. He goes batshit crazy.
No, but it's not he lets it interfere with morality. He's afraid of loss. And for good reason. He's lost a lot.
Yeah, he's afraid.
I mean, and so that's not exactly, you can't just make somebody forget that they're afraid of their wife dying. It's something that they're going to cope with in their own way. You can't just prescribe a set way of overcoming that.
But no matter, that's the problem. It's true, but again, that's more of the right thing. The Jedi could. If the Jedi could handle it in the way they speak to him and explain things to him, and he would never change. No matter what they say to him, he would still be that way because he's an emotionally attached person. He gets over involved. He doesn't know how to control his emotions the way Jedi do. In my opinion, Anakin was never a real Jedi. I mean, he was more. Not to say he wasn't powerful and good, and particularly in the Clone Wars, you see what the character was supposed to be at his best. But his handling of morality is not on the par of the Jedi, and there are a lot of Jedi that are the same way, but so many get it right. I mean, look at Obi-Wan and Siritachi. They're the prime example for how relationships should work in the Jedi Order. They love each other, but they don't let it interfere.
But I guess, do you actually think, like, the people you know in your real life, if you put them into Star Wars and you gave them those codes of behavior, how easy do you think it would be for them to just follow them like that?
Very difficult, but the Jedi aren't normal people. The Jedi are supposed to be better.
No.
That's the point. They strive for greatness. That's why they're going for. I believe dealing with emotion and relationships the way the Jedi do is a good idea. Not how they're sometimes written, but like the New Jedi Order, for example. They love, people can love one another, have romantic relations, have families, but they never let those attachments interfere with morality. And I'm of the view that morality is the most important thing in the world. So,
don't you think like that the fact that they have that sort of wiggle room, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, that probably makes it easier, wouldn't you think?
What do you mean, wiggle room? As in, like, the way the Order lets it happen?
I don't know how to make it simple. If you're, all right, so it's gone. If you're allowed to pursue a relationship at all, it's a lot easier to maintain, like, your composure than if you have to keep everything a secret because nothing is allowed. They permit enough for you to be able to follow it more easily than an Anakin situation where he had to constantly be darting around in the shadows.
I agree, but the Jedi don't actually have any issue with the romantic relationships. They never say you can't have them.
Yeah,
they have an issue with attachment.
I'm sorry, I don't agree.
They every time they bring it up, it's no attachment, no romantic relationships.
I know, but that's such a subtle. But we're splitting hairs. Like, think about Attack of the Clones. Like, what's Obi-Wan's reaction to Anakin wanting to go make sure Padme's all right when she falls off? Like, he tells him, like, you'll be expelled from the Jedi Order. It's not like a matter that he can debate and say, hey, I'm in the middle of a relationship. Let's talk about how we can make this work.
Yeah, but that's not an issue with the Jedi Code. That's just Obi-Wan being very bad at explaining things. He should have spoken to the fact that, well, he does. He brings up...
It's consistent, though. It's consistent. Obi-Wan and Yoda, like, all these teachings that you're seeing, they're consistent ideologies because they are dogmatic religion.
Not with the Jedi Order, just with the characters and how they approach the views of the Jedi. It's not the actual views.
Yeah, Colin's talking about it in a broader sense, not appealing to specific characters. He's talking about the overarching philosophy and how things are supposed to be done. He's not talking about specific situations. He's talking about the entire thing.
Like 1,000 Jedi could follow a certain way of looking at the code, but they'd still not. They still might not represent the actual way the Jedi are supposed to look at things because writers are misinterpreting, or the characters themselves are misinterpreting how the Jedi work. I mean, Obi-Wan goes on to say in that conversation, "What would Padme do in your situation? She would do her duty." Then they go and do it. The thing is, Anakin should have made that connection immediately. If he had been in the relationship they should have been in with Padme, morality over attachment, then
that doesn't address the fact that Anakin's not allowed to pursue a relationship with her, period, under that system.
But he is. They're just not allowed to get attached.
No, there's no
loads of Jedi have relationships. It's not advised because the people who can't handle it shouldn't be put in the or shouldn't be allowed to freely explore the problem. Because again, we'd have 100 of it. They can't. They've got that with the New Jedi Order. It's manageable. They're a small order. With the Clone Wars era, there are thousands of Jedi, and if every single one of them, they had to keep track of every single individual Jedi and how they handle relationships because they have to interpret the code their own way and deal with it themselves. It wouldn't work. So they have to have the whole "don't do this, it's a bad idea" thing to control the people who can't understand that it isn't a bad idea necessarily, but we can't control it. I understand that's a flaw, but that's a flaw of the organization itself as a management system, not the actual views of the Jedi. Because the views of the Jedi make sense perfectly. Keep attachment below morality. Yeah, loads of characters don't explain that very well, and loads of characters don't understand that very well, but that is the view of the Jedi.
Right. Yeah. That's totally the case. That's the view of
I
the Jedi.
totally
but
agree.
just,
Yeah.
So it's
people
not.
just
So it's,
can't always attain that. That's the thing.
yeah. So it's not flaw in the Jedi philosophy or the flaw with the way they do, the way they should do things. It's the way the characters actually are written and do things themselves.
Yeah, I think
It's how each character interprets the rules in their own way.
Yeah.
Because everybody interprets things their own way.
Well, except for the Jedi Council. It's their rules are the highway.
Obi-Wan.
That's the way it is.
Obi-Wan and Siritachi talk about if they ever get on the council and they'll change the old ways. They'll say that.
Bingo.
But then they still don't have a relationship, despite the fact they understand this.
Yeah.
They should.
Hell,
They should do.
has-
They're the exact two people who
Wives.
should be able to have a relationship because they can actually handle the relationship without it interfering with the way they do things. But they don't because everyone else can't because they're not, not really ready for it. Which is a tragedy.
Guys, I think we got a little bit sidetracked.
Sorry, yes we did.
No. But I
Perhaps.
think that's actually extremely good because you don't like a podcast where we're just like freaking talking about
Yeah.
random things. We need to get into the deep stuff. That's what.
Sorry,
Yeah,
don't
okay.
talk to me morality. I'll go on.
Stay on topic. Stay on topic.
Okay,
Apologies.
okay. So next on the list, the crystal
the li-
differences. So
Oh, I love-
specifically,
What?
okay. Well, you go first.
No, you. What, Connor?
Sorry.
There we
Okay, fine then. Well then, it's obviously how the lightsaber crystals and the lightsaber construction is presented in that Padawan arc at the start of season 5. So
Mhm.
it's not a super big deal, but it doesn't quite sit right with me because
Okay. You see,
I don't
this.
like.
Sorry.
I don't like the idea of the lightsaber crystals being blank slates that are then customized by the initiate after it's found, because it kind of takes away from the significance of finding your own crystal. In my view, it's the Sith who create their crystals, molding those crystals into what they want them to be. The Jedi look to the Force and they look to nature to provide the one crystal that is already perfect for them, the one crystal that is destined for them, the one crystal that has all of these preset attributes in place that are meant to be paired off with this specific Jedi. Whereas, the whole idea of the crystals just assuming a color associated with the Jedi during meditation and assuming properties associated with them, it kind of takes away from the whole idea of you are being guided to this particular specific crystal for a reason because it is already perfect for you. You don't need to do anything to it. But,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
see-
finished. That's my gist.
Okay, you see, my opinion is actually the complete opposite. I actually think the whole, crystals being blank, they imbue their essence into it, it changes color. I actually think that's a better way of doing it. And that's actually something I kind of wish was originally how crystals, at least for lightsabers, were formed. Because, you see, one of the biggest overarching themes with lightsabers is it's an extension of the user. Every crystal has a connection to the Force wielder wielding it. That's how Jedi are able. Excuse me. That's how Jedi are able to sense the presence of their lightsabers when they lose them. When you have you have this blank crystal. When you imbue it with your own life force, it becomes a part of you, which basically is another overarching theme of the Force. The Force binds everything, and it makes that crystal a reflection of the specific user. It strengthens the bond between user and weapon. It really, it makes also, the fact that it changes color reflects on the user's personality, which could offer up, options for blade diversity. I think it's brilliant, personally.
I agree. I'm of the same vein with that one.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad decision.
My whole mentality is because the Jedi and the Sith have very different relationships with the Force. With the Jedi trying to make yourself part of the Force, whereas the Sith are trying to force the Force to become part of you. And I feel that the crystals should represent this. A crystal that has preset properties, the idea that you are molded into something that suits it, not the other way around. Whereas what the Sith are doing is they're taking that crystal and forcing it to become what they want it to be. And it just kind of comes down to the difference between the sort of passive mentality of going with the flow, being at one with the universe. You become what the universe needs you to be, versus the aggressive, selfish mentality of, no, I will not play by the rules others set for me. I will make this thing into what I need it to be. I will not change myself. I will change it. And if it resists me, fuck it.
The Sith on a t-shirt right there. I can see where you're coming from, but I think you can strike that balance with this current way of doing things. You have best of both worlds. You go and find the crystal. You have to search for the one that's naturally attuned to you. You can't insert yourself.
You can't just pick up a blank crystal.
Yeah, you can't imprint on every crystal out there. You have to find the whole destiny and one with nature aspect comes from finding the crystal that works for you, and then you're automatically attuned to it. You find it, and then you imbue your almost like force presence, your aura into it, and that's depending on the kind of force character you are. What gives you this color? Yeah, it's the color. So it's
brilliant.
I think it works. You get the best of both worlds, but I can see where you're coming from there.
Yeah, you're because it all ties into the theme of lightsabers, being part of you, being an extension of the user. You're forging that connection with that crystal through the force. It's not just some random blue gem that you just pick up off the ground. No, it is part of you as you are part of it.
One with the universe through the crystal sort of thing.
Bingo. The crystal is the heart of the blade.
The blade, the heart of the crystal.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember the entire thing, but basically crystal, the heart of the Jedi.
Yes. What about you, Matt, Antoine?
I don't have strong thoughts on this. It didn't bother me.
Yeah, it didn't bother me either. I didn't have a second thought about it.
Well, it's like, as I said, it's something that doesn't bother me too much. It just doesn't sit right with me for those reasons. Like, I'm willing to accept it, but I just don't like it because I kind of prefer the idea of, that crystal already having all of its properties preset. It is what it is now, so it's just a question of you finding it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, but there's no uniqueness. Like it's like factory grown. There's no true connection if everybody has the same kind of crystal. They always stress how each crystal and each lightsaber is unique to the user. If all crystals are the same, then that completely defeats that concept.
Well, I'm not saying that all crystals are the same. I'm saying that every single crystal is in and of itself unique in its own special way. But the thing is that uniqueness is something that's pre-existing. It's not something that you impart to it. It is a uniqueness that makes it like a puzzle piece that is perfectly suited for you. You're not turning it into something that's suited for you. It's already suited for you. It is already right there, ready to go, destined for you. Whereas the Sith are like,
yeah, I agree too, because the dichotomy works a whole lot better between the Sith and the Jedi with Connor's mentality, because yes, the Sith impose their own will on people, they impose their own will on technology and all that kind of stuff. But when you have the Jedi, it's more about finding a harmony with something else, and for them to impose anything on that object, it would make less sense, especially within the dichotomy of the light and dark of Sith and Jedi.
I think it gives sorry.
But the Jedi, in the Clone Wars, they're not imposing their will on the crystals; they're connecting to them. It's a 50-50 deal.
Yeah, you get the way it's done at the moment. I think you get both the way you want it to be, how it's original oneness with the crystal that's in of itself unique, but then it's just the forged connection. It's like a partnership.
Right.
Both can exist without the other, but when you come together, they influence one another. So the influence for the Jedi is the force connection, and that's the color that you get. It's nothing. You're not your color is this color, and now you're forcing the crystal to have that color. It's the connection between it. And if you picked up a different lightsaber and imbued and connected with the force, you get a different color. It's the crystals as much as part of the process as well, but it's not like a natural state. It's how your different connections with the force come together. I think
it's very similar to the Harry Potter universe, where there's a wand for you somewhere. And you're harmonized with the wand. You can use other wands, sure, but they're not going to be as powerful. They're not going to be as attuned to you.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
But the only difference being that the crystals, the aesthetic of the crystal has changed by your use. It's like different, like shooting different sparks and stuff in Harry Potter. Not that was ever defined as a rule, but that.
It just kind of goes back to my own extremist mentality, though, because it's like I see it as something that should be absolute with no compromise. It's like that crystal should be what it is, with you being basically forced to submit to it, because that's the Jedi mentality to the Force. The Force is far greater than anything you can comprehend, so just trust it, submit to it, let it guide you.
That's where we disagree. Not all Jedi are like
disagree.
that. That you're
Jedi
talking
are
about.
not like
You're
it's
talking
not.
about.
You're not submitting to the Force. You're working with it.
Yeah, you're talking about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan there. Well, Qui-Gon more than Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon submits, Obi-Wan works with. It's why Obi-Wan's passive nature gets him to a better level than Qui-Gon's did. Qui-Gon trusts completely in the Force and is guided by it. Obi-Wan, like Evan says, partnerships with it. Yeah, partners himself with it. And that's how the crystal should work, in my opinion.
That's how the Force, I think, should work for all Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Well,
at the end of the day, I think it's an improvement with the crystals, what they did.
I agree. But you guys think that it isn't? Or aren't fussed?
Yeah.
I don't think it's not. I don't care. I don't want to say that like being dismissive or whatever. It's just, it's not that big a deal to me.
He's gray.
Fair enough. Okay, so the next one.
All right,
was,
so
next one is kind of leading into the lightsabers actually. Professor Huyang.
Yes, Huyang. It's
Voiced by
Huyang.
David Tennant. Who was awesome.
Yeah, David Tennant, droid, who his performance was excellent.
Yes, I am a huge fan.
Wait, what's the issue with this? Why is this a retcon? I don't see how this is a retcon. Though.
It's not really much of a retcon. It's just why did we put this on?
It's because the Jedi used to construct lightsabers themselves. Now they have Huyang providing some of the schematics to help.
Oh, that's true.
Which is fairly significant.
Well, the way I see it is, it's actually not too abnormal because it's been established in previous lore that they've had actually droids and they've had weapon masters assist in making lightsabers. Hell, Vodo Sios Bass did the exact same thing.
Precisely, that's why I have no problem with it. It's just
even Luke learned from a diary from a journal from Obi-Wan. You know, it's not like...
And Huyang, it's not like Huyang built the lightsabers for them. He's like, here's the materials, here's some styles, go nuts. He literally gives them the stuff and it's like, here, make these.
All he does is make sure they know the mechanics and so they don't blow it up. They still fuse it and make it personal.
I mean, if they're making a deadly weapon and they're kids.
Well, guys, I really like David Tennant, but the thing is, Professor Huyang struck me as just a little bit of a plot device. Not for the reasons that you guys are talking about, but mostly in terms of the role he plays within the story arc itself. The whole idea being that this ship with these Jedi initiates on it is attacked by pirates and everyone's captured. It seems to me that what they put him in as a plot device because what they needed was a wise sage who could mentor the Jedi students, but at the same time wouldn't be any match for the pirates when they attack.
Yeah, they
it's
still
the
have...
same.
He's like a safety cushion without having to dominate it for them.
Yeah, whereas the thing is, and it's the same thing with Ahsoka Tano. Like, this is wartime. Why the hell would they be having these Jedi kids being escorted by an ancient droid and an albeit talented Jedi Padawan as opposed to having a fully fledged knight in the crew?
Especially when Yoda's there when they get there.
Yeah, it just seems like they're making all of the characters they're deliberately underpowering the people who should be in control of this situation just to force their story to work, because in my view the story itself was kind of dumb to begin with if they had to make it work by having all the characters be stupid. It's like, I got no issue with Professor Huyang himself, but the thing is, what you were talking about Jedi weapon masters and such assisting in the creation of lightsabers, the thing is, all those guys who assisted were themselves Jedi. But the thing is, instead of having it so it's a Jedi doing this, whose job is to assist with lightsabers, they make it so he's a droid to ensure that he can't resist when the pirates attack. Because it's all about just forcing their plot to go ahead by making it so all the characters who should be able to do something are too weak to do something, to make it so the kids can just step up. And it's just like, it's my issues with the arc itself.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have a plot-driven plot rather than a character-driven plot. That's just
simple. I would have much preferred it if Professor Huyang had been a Jedi weapon master like Vodo Sios Bass, an actual master who would be like, okay, kids, who wants to make a lightsaber?
Kindly old man. Yeah, I can agree with that. But I don't think the way they did it detriments anything in terms of the whole... How lightsabers
Again, it's not universe shattering.
Yeah, it's just an issue with these. Like I say, it's kind of plot contrived, but I don't think it damages the whole way.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
You know. Okay,
so that's that one. What was next?
Next one would be
Mandalore and Satine.
Oh yeah, Satine.
Big one.
Okay, so here's my point of view on it. I'm not a Fandalorian, so their changed perspective on the Mandalorians don't really bother me that much. I do prefer the Republic Commando novels and those Mandalorians, but I'm not against the Death Watch Mandalorians. My big issue is actually Satine herself, along with that other character, Terria's Damson in Clone Wars Gambit. because it kind of totally ruins Kenobi's character by giving him multiple girlfriends as opposed to just Siri Tashi.
Yes, that's the only issue I have with it.
Because it basically,
Same
because his relationship with Siri Tashi strengthened his character. But as soon as you put in Satine and Taria Damson, both characters he has the exact same arc with, it fucks him up because it just turns him into this womanizing bastard with a fear of commitment. It's like as soon as he gets close to something serious with one woman, he bows out, citing the Jedi Code, but then gets in bed with the next woman he meets.
Not quite that. I think it's taking an
wouldn't go that
extreme again.
far.
Obi-Wan is not that kind of guy.
Obviously, I don't think he actually slept with them, but you get my point. It's like, it's like he just goes through this pattern 3 times. How many other broken women has he left in his wake? It's like,
well, that's not fair. They've not been broken right in any by any
well,
stretch of imagination.
I'm just saying though, it's like all of these relationships follow the exact same arc. They get into it, but then they refuse to actually follow through on it because they place their commitment to their ideals ahead of their own feelings. Woman dies, Kenobi has a chance to seek vengeance, but backs off at the last instant because he values his own integrity. And it's just like...
rinse and repeat.
It's rinse and repeat, and it weakens his character because it turns him into a womanizing bastard with a fear of commitment instead of, the strong Jedi Knight who's willing to put his commitment to the Order ahead of his own feelings. When it's just Siri Tashi, his refusal to get into the relationship with her strengthens his character. But with Satine and Taria Damson added into the mix, it turns him into a womanizing bastard.
I don't think it's quite the opposite, but I do agree that it is detrimental having more than one.
Yeah.
I mean, Siri Tachi was supposed to be, the love of his life, and now he has
Exactly.
2, possibly 3, depending on how you view that other relationship.
Yeah, my only problem with Satine was, like you said, it kind of shafts Siri Tachi's thing. Yeah. I will say this, though. She had a better death than Siri Tachi.
This is true, yeah. Although, if you ever look at that scene, notice that she keeps repeating the same...
Yes.
It goes on forever.
They do that in animation quite a bit.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that her death was a lot more satisfying than Siri Tachi's, whose death was pretty bad, actually.
Yeah. But both times, I don't think it detriments everyone so much because the focus is on how he is completely unbreakable. He does not fall in those instances, as the people he loved wouldn't want him to because they're as strong as him. They're not people. It's the difference with Anakin. Anakin doesn't view Padme as an equal. He views him as like a damsel in distress kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's my only problem with her. She's
just on that point of Anakin relationship with Padme, it is very much like a damsel in distress kind of thing. And also, if you look at the, I forget which season it was when there was like that kind of love triangle thing that was happening for a bit. I forget.
I think that's season 5.
Yeah, the banking arc.
You could kind of see how bad of a relationship they had, and they almost broke up. And I was like, oh my god, they almost broke up. But like, of course, that didn't go through. But like, they really showcased the. I think that was a good point of showcasing that they probably aren't the best people for each other. And also, Padme's kind of crazy from him.
Yeah. To be angry is to be human. But again, Siri Tachi, Satine. Satine's a perfectly fine character. I don't have anything against her. I just wish that she had been just a friend or something.
Yeah.
Not the second.
I wish that what they had done is just make Satine Siri Tashi.
Yes.
It's like seriously,
she should have been in the series. Really
they should have just given her Jedi robes and had her be in the temples instead of on Mandalore, and then have the Mandalore arc be something totally different.
She even kind of looks like Siri Tachi.
Yeah, a little bit.
Hair.
Yeah, a little bit.
Gotta wonder whether Siri Tachi's dead at that point when he meets her in the Mandalorian.
Yeah, she does at the beginning of the Clone Wars. So. But they could retcon that's a better retcon, is to have Siri Tachi survive than having a new character.
Death was so dumb.
But I know it's because they just really they didn't have any knowledge of Siri Tachi. I know that's the reason they included her.
Well, she is kind of like a C-list Jedi, like in terms of popularity.
She shouldn't be,
right.
That's the shame.
Oh, I know that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, but we've talked about Satine, focusing a bit more on the Mandalorian side of things. What did you think of like the Mandalorian culture? I kind of liked how they tried to take a different route. Again, going back to the ambition of the Clone Wars. I thought it was good. I can understand why a lot of people would find it irritating, but I think that's why they had the Death Watch. It was the Death Watch were kind of the Mandalorians represented in the lore.
Well, what I liked about it is, sorry.
No, Karen, I was done. Sorry.
What I actually liked about it is, the Mandalorians are actually usually portrayed as just this warrior culture, but when you have like an entire world of people, multiple lifestyles can happen. It's just like that in the real world. So I enjoyed seeing hey, not everybody on Mandalore is a freaking psycho with a T-shaped visor helmet who just wants to go hunting.
Yeah.
No, there are actual people there who have other ambitions, which I like. It makes the planet seem more organic.
Yeah, I agree. It adds a tint of realism to the culture.
Yeah, because a society of warlords, like a complete like planet, it wouldn't work.
In the confines of the Republic, they wouldn't be able to conquer, and that lack of ability would lead to atrophy. And whether you see that as a bad thing or not, it's still a realistic way that the culture would develop.
Yeah,
they can't keep going on wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I like how they gave the diversity, and the design of Mandalore is brilliant with the buildings.
Yes, yeah, I liked it a lot.
I didn't expect it to look like that, actually. I was actually surprised it looked like the way it did in Clone Wars.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
I thought it was cool too, but I didn't expect that.
Nice
Matt?
spin on it.
Ambivalent again. I'm not like a Mandalorian or whatever. I don't care about Mandalorians too much in the sense that I never root for those characters, but I prefer the traditional idea of what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, we're coming up on the change that you actually do have feelings about.
Yes.
So
I know.
Yes.
I'm tired of talking about lightsaber crystals and being shouted down for complaining about the Jedi and their dumb.
So I didn't mean to shoot you down. I wasn't trying that. I see where you're coming from. Agree to an extent.
Yeah.
It's just, I didn't mean to.
Moving on.
This is the one you can lead, I think. We'll start
Well,
with
you guys were talking about Suritachi, and I just I'm not going to reopen the debate we just had for half an hour.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, this one you lead though, because this is one I know you're heavily involved
You want me
in.
to lead?
Yep.
Okay.
Yoda's Force spirit training.
Okay. I don't know if you guys like this. I don't like it at all.
here.
Main reason, I was in such a bipolar frame of mind when I watched this series or this arc or whatever, because it had a lot of scenes I liked, but the overall just way they went about it rubbed me the wrong way for countless reasons. First of all, you don't take somebody who's almost 900 years old and in command of like a mystical order and write them like they don't know what they're doing. Yoda is so in the dark about the nature of the Force. Like, you just, from a writing standpoint, you don't do that. You don't write the old sage like he has no clue. He literally thinks he's going insane when he hears Qui-Gon's voice. Like, he can't even identify the voice.
Yeah.
That's madness.
It is.
It is.
That's absolute. That's just stupidity. For me, this might not be a big deal for everybody, but it ruins scenes that I like. In Attack of the Clones, I like the scene where Anakin cuts loose and you can hear Qui-Gon going, "No, Anakin, no."
Yeah.
I'm willing to look over that as Qui-Gon just kind of like experiencing the same thing as Yoda, and he's not actually communing with Yoda, which, whatever. I mean, I'm really bending over backwards to accommodate that. I can't forgive the scene where Yoda interacts with Qui-Gon's spirit in Yoda Dark Rendezvous when they talk about Dooku. One of my favorite books. It ruins the moment.
Hell yeah.
Because it makes it basically non-canon. Beyond that, I don't. There's almost nothing that I don't have a complaint about. So even stuff I'm gonna like praise, I'm still gonna complain.
Go ahead.
He doesn't like. He initially. This is kind of like the problem I have with like just the way that they chose to write this. He's not like open with the other Jedi about what he's experiencing. He's not like being that clear about like what his concerns are. They're all left to guess. Like, is he losing his mind? Is this some Sith trick or whatever? And it also reveals like, and by the way, when I was talking about the flaws of the Jedi, I was being pretty specific to this era. This age of Jedi is not that impressive to me in a holistic sense. I like a lot of the characters, but they've lost contact with certain teachings and ideas. Ki-Adi-Mundi, like he just outright dismisses the idea that he could be experiencing a message from like the other side or whatever. That's you talk about narrow-minded. he's got like a really big head, but he's incredibly narrow-minded.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they've never heard of the stories of like Exar-kun and Nomi Sunrider and all that. It's like they've never heard that. And granted, maybe the writers were proceeding as though that's not canon or whatever. Still, like for a fan, it kind of sucks, and it makes like this era of just look like they don't read their own books. I'm kind of like bouncing around all over the place, so you guys can stop me if you have something you want to say. But then I don't even know like what they are. The drama faces that instruct Yoda in the ways of the Force, like they just
did not like them. The Force priestesses,
Yeah.
I'm totally with you on basically all counts because
I agree. I'm with them too.
It's like they retcon Yoda Dark Rendezvous. They retcon so many extremely prominent. Yeah, they retcon so many prominent expanded universe stories, and of course they degrade Yoda. They make him look like an idiot.
This is an example of when they were trying to be ambitious and failed spectacularly, in my view.
Yes.
There were bits in it that were done. You could see what they're going for, and you appreciate what they were going for, but the execution was terrible. But there are a few moments outside of the training that were good, like for example the council scene. That council scene was amazing.
Oh yeah, it was. But I in addition to the awesome council scene, I will say this: it was cool that they finally gave a reason that Yoda went to Dagobah for his exile and why he had such knowledge of the cave.
They keep bouncing around that in the expanded universe. Though. They keep trying to make up new reasons. Like in the Thrawn trilogy, he fought a dark sider there, and
I know.
But and a nexus was formed, so that's why he went there. They keep changing things, but
yeah,
right,
they do keep changing, and I do wish they kind of would stick to one.
Yeah, this is a good explanation for it, though.
I mean, so he goes there, like he has like a Smeagol Gollum scene with himself. And, whatever, he passes his test after way too long. Like, he's even like, who are you? It's like, really, dude? Like, who else in the galaxy looks like you?
Yeah, and again, you don't understand that everybody has the dark side in them, really. You think you're pure. You're 900 years old and you've never come to terms with the fact that everybody has a dark side. Just because you're in control doesn't mean you don't have a dark side.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is just, I mean, it's not like a bad concept. I want to say that. Like, I'm fine with Yoda having, like, to learn a lesson or whatever, even as old as he is. I don't mind that. I just don't like the way it was done. Yeah, and then, like, so the next test is, like, the scene from X-Men 2 when Professor X is in his head with the girl. He's, like, being led around by some Padawan kid, and he's not sure what's going on. I actually like this scene.
Yeah, lots of people do, actually, me included.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's the best part about that arc.
Yeah, because to me that's showing that for all his talk, which, I'll criticize the Jedi for their talk if I think they're being hypocritical, but I don't do that on a grand scale. I do it on a case-by-case basis. I'll complain about a given character, not necessarily the entire order. In this scene, Yoda kind of walks his talk, like he's confronted with a vision of complacency. It's not a memory of what was or a vision of what will be. It's what could have been. And he can give into that moment and just kind of fighting, and he chooses not to. And that takes personal strength. Like, nobody else could have done that for him. So I like that scene a lot, also because it shows a vision of Jedi Dooku, which I'm really into.
Yes. It was nice to see.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was a good one to see that one.
But I do think it's a lesson that Yoda ultimately did not learn, especially because he had a whole conflict with like his own dark side, and it's the reason that I think Mace did such a better job against Sidious than Yoda did, is because Mace finally accepted the dark side and used it to his abilities, rather than Yoda still was rejecting it and didn't want to recognize it, and in which case he was defeated by it. So
I don't know if I agree with that, but I don't want to get sucked into like another 20-minute discussion.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
Shall we just move on?
Let's just move on.
Yeah,
so Yoda arc, thumbs down for me.
Nice.
Aside from
attempt,
few good
failed
scenes.
Spectacularly.
Yeah.
A nice attempt, a good thing to attempt, but failed spectacularly.
Several things worked, but most things didn't.
Yeah. Again, only the council scene I really liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is glorious.
All right. So,
what's
Aurra
next on the list?
Yeah, this is another one for you, Matt. Aurra Sing.
Aurra Sing. Yep. They just took away all her force ability and made her a bounty hunter.
Just a bounty hunter, yeah.
Again,
I
not the
know.
biggest. Again, I guess not. You could say it's not the biggest change in the world, but it does take a lot away from her character, especially how much they built her up in the old comics. It's like,
Yeah,
really, she's just a hired gun now, really?
No, you're not even alluding to it, like with Ventress's past. Just
Oh yeah,
nothing.
absolutely nothing. Just
And it could have
nothing.
been really good as well. She would have been a great character to reintroduce, if like not completely retconning out what happened, just mentioning it at least.
Yeah, give her a lightsaber or something. Come on.
Well,
Though
didn't she already discarded her lightsaber at that point, though? Like, didn't she already leave the Order at that point in the Clone Wars?
Yeah, but the thing is, Aurra Sing had left the Order, had been out of the Order for decades by that point. But the thing is, she did fight with a lightsaber. She was a noted Jedi hunter. In fact, she was like Grievous. She fought with the lightsabers of the Jedi she killed. She had a collection of lightsabers.
Yep.
And it's like, in the comics, she got into this pretty badass duel with Ayla Secura. Like, damn. That fight was awesome.
That was one of Ayla's
that was
crowning
pretty
moments.
awesome.
Yeah.
Taken away. Nope. No more. Just bad decision.
What?
Do you think the same, Matt?
Yeah, like in my head, that's just like what she was doing that day, and it doesn't like reflect her like not being the same character. Like I even though they didn't ever allude to it, I felt like they didn't go out of their way to smash her history.
True.
They haven't really gone out of the way
like,
to do it with anyone, but they definitely
Well,
didn't
yeah,
with her as
they
much.
did with some characters. Yeah, they did.
I don't know. I don't think they meant to destroy. Even if they meant to change, I don't think they meant to damage it.
Oh, okay. I don't want to talk about like semantics here or whatever.
Sorry,
like,
sorry.
Okay.
whether they meant to do it or not. Okay. So with her, in her case, I tend to just proceed like she's still the same character. It's just she was using guns that day.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Fancied a change of pace.
Yeah.
All right.
This
So
one.
next on the list?
This is one for you, Connor.
Oh,
All right.
Asajj
Ventress.
Ventress.
Let's have Connor lead this one.
Ventress and nicest of
Okay.
changes.
Is this the last one?
Second to
No,
last.
we got one more.
Penultimate.
Alright, okay.
All right, this is one of the changes that actually really pisses me off because, well, first they retconned Hate and Fear. Like, Evan, I know you don't care for Asajj Ventress because you feel she's generic, but I say that's kind of what makes it work because she's the quintessential Dark Jedi. She's that psychotic sob story that leads to raging lunacy. But the thing is, the problem with the Night Sister arc is that they cheapened Ventress as a character. Like, I don't mind like Matt and I have discussed this previously. I don't mind the idea of Ventress being rejected by Dooku and being forced to seek refuge with the Night Sisters. But the way they went about it was just so bad because A, Dooku didn't reject her of his own accord as he should have. He was ordered to by Sidious's, and Sidious's decision to order it seemed so casual. It just felt like he was just giving Dooku
It was
a
really
call.
arbitrary.
Yeah. He was just. It's like, hey, I want you to kill the most competent person working for us. Why? Because I want to remind you who's boss. Do what I tell you, or I'll kill you.
Well, why do you think Dooku should have done it rather than having an order? What do you think the significance of that would be?
Because in the original comics, in the final issue of the Obsession arc, Dooku
Right?
Ventress is trying to link up with Dooku and rejoin him, and he just coldly orders one of his droids to gun her down. And it's basically saying that he doesn't care about her; he just views her as an asset,
As a
and
tool?
is perfect
Okay.
and is perfectly willing to cast her aside as soon as she becomes a problem.
Because I
But
also like
in
the
this-
idea of Dooku, because Dooku was trying to actually like argue for her to Sidious. He was like, "Oh no, she's really important to me," which I felt like is still good because Dooku is still, he still got some goodness in him. He really wanted to bring Obi-Wan to his side in Attack of the Clones, and he's not completely he's a dark sider for sure, but I felt that's more compelling to see him fighting for Asajj, that she was important to him, especially being a Jedi previously, versus just coldly, demanding her execution.
Whereas for me, it's
No,
kind of the
I
exact.
I know for you it's the opposite, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm with
And
Connie.
the other.
I'm with
The-
Connor
the
as well.
other-
It's against his character. He's with Dooku. He's kind of, you get hints of him caring, but most of the time he's just completely evil. He thinks he's being good,
Yeah.
but at some points he doesn't even look like that. I mean, he has an evil laugh in the animated Clone Wars film. Like,
Yeah.
no one
Yeah.
who thinks they're good does an evil laugh.
No one who thinks
Now-
they're good doesn't evil now.
Or not
Okay.
seriously, anyway.
Well, okay. And the other problem was retconning her origin to make her into some sort of Night Sister exile who's handed over to the Radataki. It was nothing more than a cheap plot device because it was just like a lot of other story arcs. It was a story arc that was intended only to facilitate action for the sake of action, with story taking the back seat. Instead of coming up with a serious, good story reason for why the Night Sisters would accept Ventress, they just said, oh, Ventress is a Night Sister. She's being let back into the club. There we go. So that way, instead of, focusing on, okay, so why are the Night Sisters letting Ventress in? What's their agenda? They can instead just say, okay, Ventress, do you want revenge against Dooku? Here are 2 Night Sister assassins. Here's a concealment spell, and here's some poison. Have fun. And it's just like, yeah, it's like, as I said, they cheapened Ventress as a character, and it was just to set up a story arc that was just based around, action spectacle and nothing else. And of course, they also retconned the origin of Darth Maul by introducing Savage Opress, and I think that's a good way to segue into our next one. Darth Maul alive.
Before we go to Darth Maul, there's one more thing on Asajj Ventress that we missed. We probably missed a few other things, but something that I took great pains with in terms of her retconning was her tattoos. It's a very simple thing, but the tattoos had a huge significance for her.
Yes,
where
I agree.
she marked her head for each kill that she got for the warlords, and then in the new in the Clone Wars, she has some really. What are her tattoos even about in the new series?
They're just generic Sith style tattoos. They're just there to look cool. Whereas the original tattoos had meaning. They were significant and relevant to her character. Whereas these are just, yeah, I'm a Sith acolyte, so I'm going to go for Darth Maul style tattoos. But then they kind of retcon the relevance of the Darth Maul style tattoos.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's like going into Darth Maul alive, the last thing on our list.
Pull back just a second again. Sorry, rein you in. But I completely agree with all of this. But in terms, and I know Evan agrees here, in terms of her actual character changes and how she develops, I think it brought a new dimension to the character.
It brought a dimension.
Well, a dimension, yeah. She's not a blank slate anymore, and I have zero interest in Asajj Ventress. But I
completely agree.
Coming towards the end, she gets fleshed out. She starts questioning stuff. Once she's abandoned by the Sith, she's like, who am I now? What am I going to be? And we get to see that. And
that's true.
And it leads
she's her own character. She has her own feelings. She's not just an extension of someone's will now. She actually has obstacles to overcome, and she actually, thinks about, what am I going to do in this galaxy now? That's character.
Yeah.
She didn't have character in the micro series. Even the early Dark Horse comics, she was just a hired gun. She was barely a character to begin with.
Which isn't in itself a bad thing, because she was a tool.
She was a tool.
True Sith style. And then she goes beyond that in the
in the Clone Wars, they actually make her a character that actually has depth, has reason, actually has motivation, unlike her original origin in the comics, which was just, doing whatever Dooku told her to do.
She's virtually the same, though. All they did was change her backstory. They didn't give her any different motivation.
I don't think they changed it from what it was in the comics. They just added to it at the end. They've brought in some more character traits.
So she teamed up with some bounty hunters after a while and did not really that much. It's not a huge improvement.
She starts to question herself though a lot in the new Clone Wars.
Seriously.
She okay, I've been abandoned by the Sith. I'm not going to be angry and against the Jedi anymore. I'm trying to be a bounty hunter.
The original ending of her character led to the same conclusion. It's just, it was at the very end.
This is true, but that was just the start of it, and then they've expanded from that in the Clone Wars. They've taken it beyond, and now what they're going to do with Vos as well in her new book.
They basically kind of sped up the timeline for her, because she was in the same place at the end of Obsession as she was in the Clone Wars when Dooku got rid of her. It's just that it happened sooner. Yeah, basically.
So you get more beyond that point. Instead of just cutting it off what will happen to Asajj Ventress now? She's approaching what will happen to her.
Okay, so Evan, I guess my question is, you like the version of the character from the Clone Wars?
Yes.
Okay, but so you've gone from hatred to like. I don't see what that. You hated the original character. You liked this version. I don't see what's so different that you go from hating it to liking it. It's not that big of a change.
I just feel there's more to her. I just feel that them adding to her adds more depth to her character.
We like her from the point that she gets the extra add-on from the end of Obsession. Her character from that point forward in the Clone Wars is the interesting part. The start of the Clone Wars, she's exactly the same for me.
Yeah.
I'd rather have
a turkey sandwich with cheese than just a turkey sandwich.
Yeah.
No, I get that, but it's like the tiniest amount of cheese. It's like
there's cheese to come. They're going to sprinkle some more on with the new book. You know,
exactly.
we have hope with.
Yeah, there's more.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, I know. But I mean, coming from somebody who has always liked the character, I didn't know how you were justifying thinking she wasn't even decent before, like just because she questioned herself a couple times.
I just always felt like she was just boring. She was just a blank slate in the original comics and micro series.
I never hated it. I was just impassive, and now there's more to add into her that I'm more interested in. You know,
I just thought there wasn't much to her compared to many of the other acolytes, and I also disliked, you know, the origin they gave her, because I actually kind of think Asajj Ventress, almost as a character, kind of pulls a bit of a 360 for what the Dooku Sith acolytes are, because when you look at his dark acolytes, all of them are former Jedi who have some sort of vendetta against the Republic, except for Asajj Ventress, who's just some random crazy chick who just has some, you know, beef with the Jedi because her master, who she thinks got abandoned, just got killed by some warlords. It completely defeats the purpose of these dark acolytes having a connection with the old. It's kind of like Dooku.
I don't agree with that, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
We've met headway.
All right, so moving on to.
I disagree, it goes on for too long, so I just whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's just keep going.
Moving on to Darth Maul alive.
Yes, the big retcon
that everybody talked about, and he's still talking about.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Connor, start us off.
My point of view is good concept, terrible execution.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I see the Maul arc. Like, one thing I cannot criticize is the casting of Sam Witwer. Sam Witwer did a fantastic job with the material he was given. That being said, the Maul arc played out like a bad fan fiction, with even more so than the Night Sister arc. It was all about getting from action scene to action scene as quickly as possible. It's like, I like the idea of Maul being this crazy golem creature hiding in a cave, and I was hoping they would make a compelling story out of his rehabilitation. But instead, they instantly rejuvenate him with Night Sister magic, another instance of them being used as plot devices instead of characters, just so they could get on with the lightsaber duels. And it's like, Revival was a waste of time. The only thing we got out of that was a cool Kenobi versus Maul and Opress fight with the two lightsabers. And the Mandalore arc was so rushed. The takeover of Mandalore just took place too quickly. And Shades of Reason, it's like, what I see as being the defining conflict of the Maul arcs is Maul versus Kenobi. And with Shades of Reason, they completely destroy that by basically just having Maul just completely defeat Kenobi. It's like, sure, Kenobi hangs on to his integrity, but he doesn't get any sort of proper showdown with Maul. Their story doesn't get any real closure. And then they just shoehorn Darth Sidious into the mix to pick up the pieces, kick some ass and look awesome, and kill Savage Opress. Thank God.
I will say, though, that fight was excellent.
The fight was good, but it just goes back to the whole thing of the arc itself. It was all about just action spectacle with story taking a back seat. Like, almost like that's the problem with TCW overall, though. It's like they try to be ambitious, but the thing is they're always being brought down by one of two things: stupid writing or an emphasis on action ahead of story, just making everything play out stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. My main issue with the Maul arc is how his resurrection kind of cheapens Kenobi's character and kind of cheapens the end of the Phantom Menace. You know, I kind of like to view Maul's original death as kind of Kenobi's almost transition into knighthood. You know, his demonstration of his skill, the fact that he was the first being to take down a Sith Lord in like nearly 1,000 years really is a testament to him. And also, just the way it was presented in the Phantom Menace, there was so much closer to it that I feel that bringing him back kind of cheapens the ending of that movie and kind of cheapens Kenobi's as a character. That's my main issue with Maul's resurrection.
It's like
it
Kenobi's...
still is kept, though. Like, just the fact that he came back doesn't cheapen what Obi-Wan achieved on that day. I don't think that.
Agreed, and I don't
was
think that it was
my
that great a
issue
thing anyway, because the way it happened, Maul defeated him.
Yeah, and the way it happened too. Yeah. Really,
he beat him by a stupid fluke. It would never have happened if it wasn't for Kenobi's plot armor. So I don't think it was that great a deal. I mean, I understand it was an important. Wow, he beat a Sith Lord, but the way it happened, I don't think I think cheapened it more than the revival did.
True. It's just there's a lot. I just felt like the way it's presented in the film, there's a lot of closure to it, and I just feel like bringing him back kind of cheapens it. Honestly, like if they just didn't bother with Maul and they just kept it with Savage Opress,
I agree.
I think I would have been cool with that.
As long as they did something with Barriss rather than just making him a random goon.
Yeah, instead of making him a blunt instrument, right,
Yeah.
Connor?
Yeah, it's like that's all Savage Opress was. He was just a
Barbarian
goon.
with the cudgel.
Yeah, it's like he was just a disposable lackey for whoever he happened to be working for at the time. It's like that's all he was, and it was a pointless retcon of Maul's backstory just to set up this character that they didn't do anything with, and then they just bring in Darth Maul because, oh, you want to know what would be cool? Pairing off Darth Maul with Savage Opress. Now we can get some real cool action, and it's just like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, honestly, and it's kind of a shame too because in some of his early episodes, I actually thought Savage Opress had some potential to him, particularly with him in the Zabraki village.
yeah, it's like he had potential as a character, but he was completely squandered. And it's like, as I said in my video, The Blunt Instruments, Savage Opress represents the squandered potential of TCW itself. He had serious potential for growth and development, but the problem is nothing was done with it because all they cared about was action spectacle. They just wanted a big muscle tank that they could throw at the first Jedi they could think of, as opposed to a serious character that they could do something with. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with the series itself. It was all about the spectacle. It was never about the story, and it just kind of made the series into a little bit of a waste of time.
Whoa.
I agree with you on the overall sense, but there were moments. There were a lot of moments in there where they did.
I won't deny that there are.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah, there are episodes I do enjoy, but it's like there's a lot of. It's like there's stuff in there I like, but there's a lot of stuff I dislike. And the thing is, my feelings ultimately net negative because the stuff I dislike outweighs the stuff I like. It's like the sad thing is I appreciate the Clone Wars movie despite its flaws, but the series itself, it's like people say it got better in the later seasons. I say it got worse because at least in the early seasons, the stories were inoffensive. They didn't do anything super stupid. It was like a few things of what were the characters thinking here and there. But then when they got to the later seasons, it was just plot contrivance, pointless retcon, plot contrivance, pointless retcon.
You see, my feelings are the exact opposite. TCW's flaws.
Sorry, you've cut out.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, my opinion's actually the exact opposite in a way. Despite some of the retcons and despite some of its flaws, my feelings toward TCW do net positive at the end of the day. I do think, from an overall sense, it was an entertaining series that added and did certain things new with the Star Wars mythos. It introduced us to a lot of interesting characters and concepts, and I think overall, it wasn't boring. Star Wars is never boring unless you Cloak of Deception, but at the end of the day, I think I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. It had some cool ideas. There was plenty of the dislike, but I think there was more to like overall.
I agree. I'm of the same opinion.
Yeah. I think the good outweighs. Because that's like any TV series. No TV series is perfect.
But I do agree that when it does get it wrong, it does get it very wrong. But
Yeah.
I think that isn't quite as destructive as the positives it brings.
Exactly.
What do you and Matt think, Antoine?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about like
TCW, we're talking
overall.
about
Overall sense of the Clone Wars
Overall.
now.
Okay, well, I guess if you took the show away, and I only ever had what I grew up with like the video games, books, comics, whatever, I don't feel like I've lost anything. Like I'm neutral at best.
Okay.
I mean, it's just not to give like a cold, answer to it, but it never really made me like stand up and cheer. There were some things I kind of liked, but more often than not, I was just kind of shaking my head, going, "What?"
Fair enough. What about you, Antoine?
For me, like most of the EU does, it just helped broaden a lot of and inform a lot of character, I guess, decisions in the future works. Like I said, for the Ahsoka and the Anakin moment, and then Obi-Wan as well. I felt this series did help form. I mean, even though it was already formed a lot in the previous Clone Wars canon that was established already. Like even I think it was overlooked by George Lucas the whole time too. Like when they did the novels and the micro series and all that kind of stuff, it was already pretty well established. So I'm not even sure why they chose it. It was like after Episode 3 came out, and I'm not really quite sure why they went that route. You know, I think it would have been much better if because I know they had the idea of going to the between Episode 3 and 4, like not Rebels, but they had like the Boba Fett idea, the whole TV series. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
yeah, I remember
the unfulfilled promise. I felt that would have been more compelling than this. I felt this was kind of excessive, but what it does bring, I am fine. I'm fine with. So
cool. Alrighty.
Well, that's
I guess that's
pretty
TCW.
thorough analysis of the TCW series.
All
as
our
well as everything
opinions.
else. Yeah.
TCW.
Opinions on other things as well. Sorry for the midway rambling from me. Don't
That's
don't talk about
podcasts
morality.
That's
It'll
what
go on forever.
podcasts are for.
Those are podcasts for sure.
You better not cut that out.
I won't, but I will probably
ahead.
put a warning. So warning, rambling and so. Anyway.
Maybe actually put in a little countdown thing that's listing how long until the rambling is over, so that way people can just skip ahead to when it's done.
Or do an annotation thing. Well, you can do an annotation on the video, can't you? Saying to skip.
I suppose. Yeah.
Skip rambling.
Yeah.
It's like, I suppose maybe to work.
Hey, I've got to edit the whole thing. I've got to put pictures in whenever we talk about a topic.
Yeah. I think you could spare a whole 5 minutes, Connor.
Yeah. Well, as for so yeah, I guess so. Stop.
So,
alrighty.
Mixed feelings on the Clone Wars and overall between us. Most of us like it.
I think we all got a pretty good, well-rounded opinion.
Neutral, dislike, and like. So.
Yeah. All sides of the Force.
Yeah.
Dark, light, gray.
Indeed. Well, this has been episode 5 of the Council Forcecast then. Retty 4 signing off.
Who's next
Go
up?
that
I
way.
don't know.
Go that way.
Connor, you have to be last.
Gen Sarai 1 signing off. I don't care what you say.
Oh, okay.
This is Antoine signing off.
Evanova 95. We hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, Great Jedi 91 here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. It's
totally.
something I hope will happen again soon.
The Godfather of the Versus series.
All day, every day.
I feel like all I managed to do is like ruffle feathers, so whatever.
No, that's fine. it's
Hey,
back and forth.
something.
Back and forth is the most interesting part of the podcast.
No,
in my
it's a
opinion.
lot better
course.
than just agreeing.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Yes, that's it then. Are we doing
see
the
you
walking
guys.
away thing?
Bye.
I'll just wait.
I'm tired as well.
Connor goes though.
Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.